Hi, you are on the History Voice channel. Today's story is about a poor girl from the province who comes to the city with nothing but a dream. She creates a simple but genius business idea that changes lives, rises from the bottom to the top, and learns to balance ambition with reality. So, let's move on to the story. The train screeched as it rolled into the small station. Dust swirled around the platform, and the smell of diesel mixed with the faint sweetness of sunflower fields nearby. She stepped off with a worn-out suitcase in one hand and a second-hand backpack on her shoulders. Her shoes were scuffed, her jacket was 2 winters old, and her heart carried both hope and fear in equal measure. She had left the province behind, a place of endless dirt roads, gossiping neighbors, and days filled with routine jobs that paid just enough to survive but never enough to dream. At home, people told her to be realistic, to accept that some are born to struggle while others are born to shine. But deep down, she refused to believe it. The capital city loomed ahead, louder, faster, and far more ruthless than her small town. She didn't know anyone here, had no connections, and carried only a few $100s she'd saved from waitressing and tutoring children. Yet she believed she had something stronger than money, an idea. The idea had come to her one evening when she noticed her mother writing down weekly expenses in a crumpled notebook. Her mother complained about always forgetting prices, wasting hours walking to different stores, and never finding affordable deals. That night, the girl thought, what if people could save both time and money by sharing information instantly? The thought sounded naive at first. After all, she wasn't a programmer, nor a businesswoman. But the more she considered it, the clearer it became. Everyone complained about prices. Everyone hated wasting time. What if she created something simple, something accessible, an app, or maybe even a platform that helped people compare, share, and choose smarter? The city greeted her with cold stares and rushing crowds. She found a tiny rented room on the edge of town, bare walls, a creaky bed, a single desk. At night, she wrote and sketched her idea obsessively, filling pages with drawings of buttons, lists, and charts. By day, she worked in a cafe, washing dishes until her hands cracked. Weeks turned into months. Most evenings she came home exhausted, but she refused to give up. She visited public libraries, teaching herself about startups, coding basics, and business models. She couldn't afford mentors, so she watched free online lectures. She couldn't afford developers, so she wrote to strangers on forums, asking for advice. Many ignored her. Some laughed at her. But a few answered. It was one of those strangers, an IT student named Pavel, who finally agreed to meet her in person. He wore glasses, carried 2 laptops, and spoke quickly, as though his mind moved faster than his mouth. So, what you're saying, he summarized, is an app where people can track and compare local prices, share best deals, and basically crowdsource ways to save money? Yes, she said eagerly. But it must be very simple. No complex design. Just fast and useful. People don't want another complicated tool. They want help. Pavel scratched his chin. It's possible. Not too difficult, actually. But building it alone will take months. You'll need data, servers, some design. I don't have money, she admitted. But I'll work, I'll save, I'll do anything. I believe in this. He studied her for a moment, then gave a small smile. You're crazy. But maybe crazy enough to make it work. That evening, sitting across from Pavel in a cheap cafe, she felt for the first time that her dream was not just fantasy. It could be real. Over the next 6 months, they worked tirelessly. She covered cafe shifts by day and spent nights helping Pavel test prototypes. She learned enough coding to fix small issues, but her real strength was vision. She knew what people like her mother needed. She insisted on simplicity, clarity, and trustworthiness. The first version of the app, which they named Smart Save, launched quietly on a free platform. At first, no one noticed. They shared it with friends, family, and strangers online. Some downloaded it, then forgot about it. But slowly, small sparks appeared. One evening, she checked the app and gasped. Hundreds of people had joined in a single day. A local blogger had written about SmartSave, calling it the app that helps poor students survive the city. Overnight, downloads skyrocketed. Comments poured in. Finally, something useful. This saved me an hour today. Please add more stores. She couldn't sleep that night. She walked the city streets, wide awake, her heart beating fast. The neon lights glowed above her, the traffic hummed, and for the first time she felt that maybe, just maybe, she was climbing out of the invisible box life had placed around her. But success brought new challenges. More users meant higher server costs. More attention meant competitors. And more work meant less time to rest. She began to wake up at 5 a.m., work until midnight, and live on coffee and bread. Her savings disappeared quickly. Pavel grew frustrated, complaining that he couldn't keep coding for free. Investors showed mild interest but demanded control. She faced difficult choices: protect her dream or sell part of it to survive. One evening, while staring at her mother's old notebook filled with expenses, she whispered to herself, "This is bigger than me. I can't stop now." She didn't know it yet, but SmartSave was about to explode, and with it, her entire life would change. Morning light crept through the blinds of her tiny rented room. She rubbed her eyes, the phone buzzing non-stop on the desk. Notifications flooded the screen. New downloads, new reviews, new requests. SmartSave was no longer just an experiment, it was spreading. By the end of the week, local newspapers had written about it. Students loved it, single mothers praised it, and pensioners called it a miracle. Within a month, SmartSave had crossed 50,000 users. She barely had time to breathe. But growth was expensive. Server bills piled up, and Pavel threatened to quit unless they found proper funding. "We need investment," he insisted. "This can't run on passion alone." The idea of asking investors terrified her. She imagined sitting in glossy offices, surrounded by men in suits, her second-hand dress and cheap shoes betraying her origins. Still, she knew he was right. Without money, SmartSave would collapse under its own weight. The first pitch meeting was a disaster. She stuttered, fumbled with slides, and forgot half her prepared speech. The investors nodded politely, then dismissed her with vague promises. Outside, she sat on the steps of the building, humiliated. "Maybe they're right," she muttered. "Maybe I don't belong here." Pavel sat next to her, sipping a soda. "You're not a polished speaker. So what? You're the one with vision. Next time, tell them the story. Why it matters. That's your strength." The next pitch, she spoke differently. She told the story of her mother's notebook, of wasted hours, of ordinary people struggling to stretch every coin. She didn't use fancy words. She spoke from the heart. And this time, investors leaned forward. After weeks of meetings, one finally said yes. A modest sum, just enough to expand servers and hire a small team. She signed the contract with trembling hands. With the new funds, SmartSave grew faster. They added features, personalized alerts, maps, and discounts for loyal users. Word spread from city to city. Within 6 months, SmartSave had reached 500,000 users. Her life changed overnight. She moved into a small but bright apartment. She bought her first new dress in years, her first real laptop, her first pair of shoes that didn't blister her feet. The city that once felt hostile now seemed full of possibility. But success also carried a weight she hadn't expected. Strangers recognized her on the street. Journalists called, hungry for interviews. She was invited to conferences, where she stood under bright lights and spoke about innovation and social impact. Yet behind the applause, doubts lingered. Investors wanted faster growth, bigger profits. Add ads, they said. Push premium features. But she resisted. SmartSave must stay accessible, she argued. It's for people who don't have much. One evening, she returned home after a long day of meetings. The apartment was silent, too clean, too empty. She sat at the table, staring at the city skyline through the window. She had everything she once dreamed of, yet loneliness pressed on her chest. In the early days, she and Pavel had celebrated each milestone with cheap pizza and laughter. Now they barely spoke except about deadlines. He spent more time with the new programmers than with her. She wondered if their partnership was breaking. As weeks passed, the pressure grew. Competitors launched similar apps, some with slicker designs and larger budgets. Investors demanded she fight aggressively. Her calendar overflowed with appointments. She barely slept. One night, exhausted, She returned to her apartment and found an envelope under the door. Inside was a letter from her mother, written in careful, shaky handwriting. "My dear, I see your face on TV sometimes. I am proud, but I worry. Remember to eat. Remember to rest. Money is not everything. Do not lose yourself." Tears blurred her vision. She clutched the letter, realizing how far she'd drifted from the simplicity that inspired her. But the world wasn't slowing down for her nostalgia. The next week, she received an invitation to a National Business Award ceremony. SmartSave was nominated in the category of Social Innovation of the Year. It was the kind of recognition that could change everything. The hall was grand, filled with polished marble and glittering chandeliers. She wore her best dress, her heart racing as she walked past cameras and microphones. When the announcer finally declared, "And the winner is SmartSave," the crowd erupted in applause. She walked onto the stage, lights blinding her, the trophy heavy in her hands. For a moment, she felt as though she had truly climbed to the top of the world. But backstage, while shaking hands with dignitaries, she overheard two investors whispering, "She's a good face for the brand, but she'll need real management soon." Yes, passion is nice, but passion doesn't scale. Their words sliced through her triumph. She smiled for the cameras, but inside she wondered, am I just a symbol? Will they push me aside when I'm no longer useful? Later that night, after the ceremony, she walked alone through the city streets. Neon lights reflected in puddles, taxis rushed past, and the noise of nightlife surrounded her. She held the trophy close but felt strangely hollow. She had dreamed of success, of proving that someone from nowhere could build something meaningful. But now, success felt like a double-edged sword. The higher she climbed, the more fragile the balance became, between her ideals and the demands of profit, between her dream and the harshness of reality. And she knew, the hardest part of the journey was only beginning. The weeks after the award ceremony were a blur of meetings, contracts, and expectations. SmartSave, once a small project born from late nights and hope, had become a brand. She was no longer just a girl with an idea. She was the founder, a symbol of social mobility, an example reporters loved to romanticize. But behind the glossy headlines, cracks deepened. Her investors demanded constant growth. They pushed for monetization strategies she didn't believe in, selling user data, introducing aggressive advertising, or creating a premium version that would exclude the very people SmartSave was meant to serve. "This app was built for people like my mother," she argued one morning in the boardroom, her voice trembling but firm. "If we betray them, what's the point?" An investor leaned back, smirking. "Idealism doesn't pay bills. Do you want SmartSave to survive or not?" The room fell silent. For the first time, she felt truly outnumbered. Meanwhile, her friendship with Pavel deteriorated. He accused her of being too emotional, too slow to make tough decisions. She accused him of forgetting why they started. Their arguments grew sharper until one day he slammed his laptop shut and said, "Maybe I made a mistake joining you. Maybe someone else can run this better." She stood frozen as he left the office. 4 hours, she sat staring at the empty chair across the desk, the memory of pizza-fueled brainstorming sessions replaying in her mind. He hadn't just been her partner, he had been her first believer. Losing him felt like losing a part of herself. As SmartSave grew, so did the noise around her. Emails piled up. Her phone buzzed constantly. Everyone wanted a piece of her: partners, advertisers, journalists, even opportunists pitching ideas. She barely had a moment to breathe. One night, after a 16-hour day, she collapsed on her apartment floor. The trophy from the award ceremony stood on a shelf, gleaming in the dim light. She stared at it and whispered, "What is this worth if I'm breaking inside?" The next morning, she received devastating news. Her mother had been hospitalized with exhaustion and high blood pressure. Guilt stabbed her heart. She hadn't visited in months, always promising she'd come next week. Her success, meant to honor her mother's sacrifices, had pulled her away instead. She rushed back to her hometown. The train ride felt endless, the fields outside the window reminding her of simpler times. At the hospital, her mother smiled weakly from the bed. "I'm fine, don't worry," her mother said, though her pale face betrayed the lie. "I'm proud of you. Everyone here talks about you. They say you're proof that someone from this town can make it." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what if I'm losing myself in the process?" Her mother took her hand. "Then you must find yourself again. Success means nothing if it costs your soul." Those words echoed in her mind long after she returned to the city. But the city didn't wait for her healing. Competitors grew stronger, investors grew impatient, and Pavel officially quit, joining a rival startup. His departure shook the company's morale. Some team members began doubting her leadership. At the same time, rumors spread online. Critics accused her of exaggerating her poor background to attract sympathy. Anonymous posts claimed SmartSave was selling out. Each article felt like a dagger. She tried to fight back, but the pressure crushed her. Panic attacks hit during meetings. She snapped at employees, then regretted it. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was a fraud. One particularly brutal day, after a failed negotiation with a major retail chain, she locked herself in the office bathroom and sobbed silently. She wanted to quit, to walk away, to disappear. But quitting meant abandoning millions of users who now depended on SmartSave. It meant betraying the girl who once arrived in the city with nothing but an idea. She thought back to the night she and Pavel first sketched SmartSave on a napkin. The vision hadn't been about profits, awards, or recognition. It had been about helping people like her mother. That clarity gave her strength. The next morning, she made a radical decision. She would take back control. She called an emergency board meeting. Investors filed in, ready to push their agenda once more. But this time, she stood tall. "I founded SmartSave to make life easier for people with little money and little time," she began. "I will not turn it into a machine that exploits them. If you want that, replace me. But as long as I'm here, this company will stay true to its mission." The room buzzed with murmurs. Some scoffed, others looked surprised. One investor finally said, "You realize this could cost us millions?" She looked him in the eye. "Then let it cost millions. Some things are worth more than money." Her bold stance shocked everyone. A few investors threatened to withdraw. Others, unexpectedly, admired her conviction. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt she had reclaimed her voice. That evening, she returned to her small apartment. The city lights glittered outside her window, but inside, she felt a calm she hadn't felt in months. She brewed tea, sat at the desk, and wrote a letter to herself. Remember why you started. Remember your mother's notebook. Remember the people who thank you for saving them an hour, a coin, a piece of dignity. This is your compass. Follow it, no matter how loud the world becomes. Her hand trembled, but her heart felt steady. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether SmartSave would soar or collapse, whether investors would stay or leave, whether Pavel would ever speak to her again. But she knew one thing: she was ready to fight for her dream without losing herself. And that choice, more than any award or investment, marked the real beginning of her journey. Months passed like storms, loud, unpredictable, and exhausting. SmartSave had survived the investor conflict, but the company was far from stable. Some backers pulled out, forcing her to cut expenses. The team shrank, leaving only those who truly believed in the mission. The flashy headlines disappeared, replaced with silence. At first, she feared this was the end. But strangely, the quiet gave her space to think. Without the constant noise of external pressure, she reconnected with her purpose. She visited local communities again, talking directly to students, parents, pensioners. She asked them what they needed most. The answers surprised her. People didn't care about premium features or AI algorithms. They wanted reliability. They wanted honesty. They wanted a tool that worked every single day, without tricks, without hidden fees. So she shifted SmartSave's strategy. Instead of chasing rapid growth, she focused on stability and trust. She cut unnecessary features, simplified the design, and made transparency the app's core promise. Her small team worked tirelessly, motivated by the belief that they were building something meaningful. Slowly, loyalty grew. Users recommended SmartSave not because it was flashy, but because it was useful. Local shops partnered willingly, drawn by the authenticity of the platform. Media attention returned, not as sensational headlines, but as thoughtful articles praising SmartSave's quiet revolution. One evening, while checking the user dashboard, she noticed a message from a woman in her hometown. "Thanks to your app, I save enough every month to buy my son new books. Please don't ever change what you're doing." She read the message over and over, tears filling her eyes. It was proof that her sacrifices meant something. Yet even as SmartSave stabilized, her personal life remained a battlefield. Loneliness lingered. Her relationship with Pavel was fractured beyond repair. He had built his own startup, which grew aggressively, but when their paths crossed at conferences, his eyes avoided hers. She missed their friendship, but she had learned that not every bond survives ambition. Her health, too, demanded attention. After collapsing during a late-night work session, she finally visited a doctor, who warned her, "Your body is not infinite. If you keep burning yourself like this, you won't have a future to fight for." The words stung, but they forced her to act. She began making small changes: morning walks, balanced meals, evenings without screens. She started journaling, not for business plans, but for her own thoughts. Slowly, she remembered the girl who once arrived in the city with nothing but a suitcase and determination. The true turning point came when she was invited to give a talk at a university in her province. Standing in front of young faces full of curiosity, she felt both nervous and humbled. She told them about failure, rejection, loneliness. She spoke of nights when she wanted to give up, of mistakes that nearly destroyed everything. And then she said, "People call me a success story. But success is not a trophy or a bank account. Success is waking up every day and choosing not to betray your dream or yourself. If you remember that, no matter where you start, you can rise." The auditorium erupted in applause, but what mattered most was the spark she saw in the students' eyes. Maybe, just maybe, her story could become a ladder for others too. After the lecture, she visited her mother. They sat together in the garden, sipping tea while sunflowers swayed in the wind. Her mother looked healthier now, her smile warm. "You look different," her mother said. "Lighter, somehow." She nodded. "I think I finally understand. Success isn't about reaching the top. It's about carrying the people who helped you climb. It's about staying true." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Then you've already succeeded." Back in the city, SmartSave continued to grow, not explosively, but steadily, like a tree with deep roots. She had learned to balance ambition with care, work with rest, dream with reality. The app became a trusted companion for millions, a quiet force that made everyday life a little easier. And she, once a poor girl from the province, no longer measured herself by trophies or investors' approval. She measured herself by the letters of gratitude, by the smiles of users, by the peace she felt when she looked in the mirror. One night, as she walked home through the bustling city streets, neon lights dancing in puddles, she paused. She thought of the girl who had once stepped off the train, scared and uncertain, clutching a battered suitcase. She wished she could whisper to that girl, "You will stumble. You will cry. You will lose people. But you will also rise. Not because the world gives you permission, but because you dare to keep going." She smiled to herself, the noise of the city fading into the background. The journey was far from over. New challenges would come, new struggles, new doubts. But she had found her balance. For the first time in years, she felt free.